Om Aganati Marandasyang Ganangana Saragya Chaksurin Miritam Yanatashmai Suyirve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yera Bhutare Sayam Rupakiram Yam Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamaram Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahaganada Ganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parejana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Larita Sri Vishakhan Vitam Sya Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayodire Nashta Priyashu Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavati Uttamashoki Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki Nikama Kapaturgaritam Param Shukamakaram Ita Sarvi Samvitam Pivata Bhagatam Rasamalayam Mohora Horisi Ubhavi Vakaham Krishna Sadam Bhagate Dhammakini Isha Karuna Sadhu Samasha Parana Kodunoditaham Tama Piadabhishita Vishatam Vibho Samyapirana Vidam Vidaksharam Prakahidahur Moharadam Sanklesha Navana Musanti Nanyataham Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Thanks for joining us this Motivational Monday. I see Govinda Dev joined us. He gave a spectacular talk last Saturday night in the Salt Lake City Temple. I only heard good things about it. The crowd was spellbound. Thank you for that service, Govinda, and thank you for the depth and heartfeltedness of your realizations. You're a jewel in the yatra of Utah. Rupa Manjari, Malini Preeti, Jimmy, thanks for joining us this morning on this Monday morning. Rakeshji, Anjali, Joe, Rupa Manjari. Okay, let's, I don't know if I shared this with you last week, but you know, we talk a lot in our motivational talks on Saturday and Sunday nights about just keeping on. You know, don't overthink things. Don't demand quick outcomes. Oftentimes delays, difficulties are just a test. And when you pass the test, it may take a while, a period of waiting in which you're tempted to be frustrated and discouraged. But if you keep your spirits up, keep a smile on your face, keep being good, faithfully chant Hare Krishna with a good attitude and a positive expectation for the future, then when you've passed the test, things will break suddenly. The wait will be over, your time has come, and things will happen suddenly. So we had an example of this last week. We originally were encouraged to build the Salt Lake City Temple by one of our members, Sri Sharma. We didn't feel we had the money and resources to do it. But he kept pushing. You must have a temple in Salt Lake City, something accessible to the large population that's densely packed there in the Salt Lake City area. Because to visit Spanish Fork requires like a half a day to travel back and forth. And we said, well, Sri, we don't have the money, we don't have the resources. He said, don't worry, I'll help you out. So we started building it, I think 2014. It opened last year, 2019. It's been open for 1 year. We budgeted $1 million. It ended up costing twice that. Sharma was true to his word. He outright gave $152,000. And then when we got in trouble about 3/4 of the way through, he loaned us. He gave us an interest-free loan for $208,000, which enabled us to finish the temple. We got a few other loans from our other members, but they weren't anywhere near $208,000. They were $5,000, $10,000, couple $20,000 loans. So I had counted on the Color Festival this past spring to generate some income by we could repay that $208,000 loan. And then we had a wholesale color business where we sold to schools and nonprofits all over the country for their own color events. And of course that went away overnight. So we lost our two main sources of extra income. And all year long it's been weighing on me, how are we going to repay Sharma? It's a lot of money, $208,000, and we're barely, our income just covers the bills. What comes in basically goes out is equal now. So this had been weighing on me. And then, you know, but we kept a good attitude, kept positive. We knew Krishna's in control. Krishna has a plan. We just need to keep upbeat and pass the test. And then suddenly, last week, Sharma called and he said, Caru, I'm building this 189 feet tall statue of Shiva in my home state, Bihar in India, and I want Bhai Bobby to head up the team of designers and architects. And if she'll agree to do this, I'll wipe the slate clean. I'll forgive you the entire $208,000 interest-free loan. So that's just an example of what we're always talking about. There will always be a time of waiting. There will always be delays. There will always be difficulties after you strike out to pursue your God-given dream. But during that time of waiting, what your attitude is going to determine whether the dream comes to pass or not. It's just a test. It's not that things have gotten out of God's control. Things are very much in His control, but He wants to see how you're going to handle the delays and the difficulties, so that if you're faithful in little, then He can give you much. And so just wanted to share that bit of good news with you. Spanish Fork Temple's been paid off for years, and now the Salt Lake City Temple, along with its 4 acres of land, downtown Salt Lake, is very close to being completely debt-free. And I am also very close to being completely without any material concerns or anxieties or stress whatsoever, thanks to the Almighty Lord of millions and millions of universes, Aham Savesha Prabhu Mata Savarvardite, Lord Sri Krishna. So we're on the 36th verse here. Thanks for your emojis. I'm feeling emojis also in my heart due to the grace and the mercy of the Lord. 36th verse, 3rd chapter, 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Thanks very much for your support. The screen is going alive now with expressions of joy and faith. And I'm sure all those who are lighting up the screen are going to apply some of this in their own lives and go to the next level of surrender to the Lord. You will not regret it. Take it from me. If you want to see the Lord show up and show out in your life, you got to stretch your faith. You got to take some risks. You got to embark upon plans that you could not fulfill on your own. You have to have dreams that you can only fulfill with the benign intervention of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's the secret to having God show up and show out in your life. That's the secret to having the direct perception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in your life. So I wish you all well in your God-given dreams, and we'll keep you posted on how things shaken out here in Utah Yatra. Once again, 36th verse, 3rd chapter, 1st canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. Savayidam Visham Amoga Lila Srijati Devati Ati Nasajate Shmin Bhuteshu Chantarita Atma Tantra Shadbhagikam Jigarati Shad Guneshan. The Lord, whose activities are always amalam, spotless, is the master of 6 senses and is fully omnipotent with the 6 opulences. He creates the manifested universes, maintains them and annihilates them without being in the least affected. He is within every living being and is always independent. The 6 senses, of course, are the 5 senses, seeing, touching, tasting, hearing, and smelling, as well as the mind. Mana Shasht Indriyani. The mind is the 6th sense. The Lord is described as always the master of the 6 senses. Rishikesha, Rishikena, Sevanam, Bhaktir Uchama. So if you use those senses, instead of gratifying them from an egotistical, self-interested point of view, if you recognize that the senses come from the Lord, and as such they should be dedicated and consecrated in the use of the Lord, in the service of the Lord, then Rishikesha, Rishikena, Bhaktir Uttama, that defines, that's the definition of bhakti. Take my life and let it be, Lord, dedicated to Thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of Thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for Thee. Take my lips and let them sing always only for my King. Take my mouth and let it be filled with messages from Thee. Take my silver and my gold, not a mite would I withhold. Take my intellect and use every power thou shalt choose. Take my will and make it Thine, it shall be no longer mine. Take my heart, and it is Thine own, it shall be Thy royal throne. Take my love, my Lord, I pour at Thy feet as treasure stored. Take myself, and I will be ever only all for Thee. That is the prostration, that is the dedication, that is the offering of all of one's senses in the service, dovetailed in the service of the Lord, which is being discussed here. He also is the master of 6 opulences. He's the master of our 6 senses. And when we connect our senses to his senses, nothing is impossible. It's like I gave the example in the last class. We can walk 3 or 4 miles an hour, but there are 20 or 30 steps we can take, which after having taken which, we're sitting down going 600 to 800 miles an hour. Of course, those are the steps that we take to board an airplane. By virtue of our becoming one with, we don't lose our identity, but we enter into the plane itself, the cabin of the plane, and then we take advantage of those, the thrust of those powerful jet engines and all that high octane fuel, so that when by virtue of our identifying, becoming one with the whole plane, we're going from 3 miles an hour to 800 miles an hour. Similarly, when we take our puny senses and we connect them in service with the senses of the Lord, that's called bhakti. That's called devotional service. And then we as individuals can accomplish anything because we've got the Lord himself breathing in our direction. And who is God? One time Prabhupada asked his fledgling disciples to give him a definition of God. Various answers came out. They were based on the Bhagavad Gita. They were based on scripture. But Prabhupada was not satisfied until they gave this answer. The definition of God was given by a sage named Parasara Muni many, many thousands of years ago. I'll translate it, but first the original. Aishwarya Shabhagasha, Bir Yasha Yashasha Sriya, Gyanam Vairagyastapi, Shanam Bhagamitingara. God is defined because God means what? Means power. Parent asks their child to make their bed, and the child talks back, "Why should I make my bed?" And the parent says, "Because I said so and I'm God." When we say the word God, it connotes power. But that's only one of the 6 opulences which the Supreme Lord exhibits in full. Power is certainly there. Knowledge, of course, is there. Beauty. God is beautiful, something we seem to have missed in our Judeo-Christian culture by portraying God as an old man with a beard. God is power, God is knowledge, God is beauty, God is fame, God is wealth, and God is humility. There's nobody who has more of a right to be swell-headed or puffed up, and yet there is nobody more humble than God himself. So that possessor of 6 opulences in full, he can take you with your surrendered attitude anywhere. He can empower you to do anything. You can make a difference in your generation. You can be a history maker. You can be a world changer, not on your own puny powers, but by virtue of connecting yourself with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we primarily do that, at least we set ourselves in the right direction every morning of our lives by getting up, cleaning our body externally by taking a shower, and then the internal cleansing process must be done regularly, daily, consistently as your practice, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Associating with the Lord through sound vibration, chanting his holy names as it is received from the saintly chain of disciplic succession is the way to awaken your love of God and empower you as an individual infinitesimal spirit soul, that all bets are off. There are no limits to what an empowered, surrendered spirit soul can do in the service of the Lord. Good example is Narada Muni. If you ever wanted to find the example of someone who had no benefits, had no assets from birth, it would have been Narada Muni in his previous life. He didn't know who his father was. His mother had known many men. He was not present. It was what we would call a single parent household nowadays. And his mother died from a snake bite when he was only 5 years old. So orphaned, fatherless from birth, orphaned, motherless at the age of 5 years old. A formula for disaster. How could he even survive? What to speak of thrive? Yet he found himself during the rainy season, the 4 months of Chaturmas, living, having been taken in by saints in an ashram, and he served them. He brought water from the river. He helped cut up vegetables in the kitchen, and he would listen to the great saints and sages, Majjita, Madgata, Pranabodhyantas, Parasparam, Katayantas, Chamam, Nityam, Tashanti, Charamaticha. He would listen to the purified saints chanting and hearing the unlimited topics of the all-powerful Lord. This is how he describes his previous life. He's talking to Vyasadeva, the compiler of the Vedas, telling how it was he had become empowered from having become disenfranchised, unfortunate, with no advantages, having seen the light of day. That orphan boy became Narada Muni in his next life, and Narada is explaining that progress, that process to Vyasadeva. This is the 27th verse, Prashant, if you're out there, 5th chapter, 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Tajmij tada labda ruchi mahamate priyashivashyas galita mater mamam. Yayahame tad sarasad shramayam pasyam mayi brahmanam kapitam pare. Dear Vyasadeva, Narada Muni says, I got a taste for hearing, a taste for serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as I heard more and more the katha, the nectar flowing from the lips of the saintly persons, my attention became more and more focused, more unflinching, more fixed. And as my attention became more fixed, my taste thickened, my taste increased. And then I disassociated as a result of the maturation of the hearing and tasting process. My connection to my mind and my body lessened, just like a knot. Sometimes we tie a knot, and then due to pulling from both sides of the rope, the knot becomes so tight that we can no longer undo it. We ourselves created the knot, but we also created the tightness of the knot, so that although it was our doing, we cannot undo the knot. So Narada Muni says that he was able to undo the knot of bodily identification, the knot of ahankara, the knot of false ego, through the process of hearing. Achatitam, shamadatam, nashaknosi mayistaram, abhyasi yoganatatam, mam ichaptam dhananjaya. Says one can cut or undo the knot of false ego through the devotional service of the Lord. And then Narad goes on with his description in the next verse, 28th verse of the 5th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Itam sarat paraviksha vrito hare, vrishinvato ne nushabanam yashomalam, sankirtan yamanam munabir mahatmabir, bhakti pravitama rajastamo paham. So he stayed there during the rainy season, which was 4 months of Chaturmas. And then he says he continued to stay in the post-rainy season during the autumn. In one verse of the Bhagavad Gita rap by Kalakanta, he says, of hymns I am Gatri, of seasons I am spring, of months I am November, the time of peace and harvesting. So we're at that time of year which is so auspicious. It's the time of Ram's victory over Ravana. It's the time Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill and they had the big Anakut feast. It's the time of harvesting. It's the time of, if you're a merchant, you're closing your books, you're ending your physical year and starting another one and praying to Lakshmi. This is an extremely peaceful and auspicious time of the year. And it was during this time, preceded by the months of the rainy season, that Narada Muni, as a small 5-year-old orphan boy, dedicated himself to serving and to hearing the katha, the topics of the unadulterated, amalam, purest, flowing of the glories of the Lord. Flow is used in this verse, and the word flow is very, very significant. In the Adi Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, 2nd chapter, 2nd verse, we find this verse. O my merciful Lord Chaitanya, may the nectarean Ganges waters of your transcendental activities flow on the surface of my desert-like tongue. The topics of Krishna are compared to the Ganges water, which flows over the desert-like parched tongue. They said, Shota Yanini Rajanam Ninam Santi Apasyatam Atmatatam Griyashu Griyanam. There are many subject matters for speaking and hearing in this world, but they're not going to satisfy the hankering of the soul. The soul is like a man in the desert. You can't satisfy a thirsty man in the desert with 1 or 2 drops of water. He requires a lot of water, large quantities of water. So similarly, the mundane, temporary, political, and economical topics of this mundane world are just like drops of water to the thirsty man in the desert. So what will satisfy him are the transcendental activities flowing over his tongue like the Ganges water. And it is said that in these waters of the topics of the transcendental pastimes of Krishna, like there are in many waters that we perceive, there are lotus flowers. The singing, the dancing, the loud chanting of Lord Krishna's holy names are compared to lotus flowers, and the devotees are called swan-like. Just like the swan delves into the lotus buds and tastes the sweetness that's within those lotus buds, devotees of the Lord taste the sweetness and the variety of the Lord's transcendental pastimes. And therefore, the devotees are compared to swans, ducks, and humming bees who know how to identify, find, locate, and extract the honey from the flowers. And that river full of lotus buds, tasted by bees and ducks and swans, produces a melodious sound that gladdens the ears. Srinvatam Shakata Krishnam. We have more description here in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th chapter, 70th verse, 44th verse, 70th chapter. And again we find the word amalam, which means pure. Yasha amalam divi yasha praditam rashayam bhumo chete bhuvanam mangalam dig vitanam mandakiniti divi bhogavatati chado gangeti cheha charanam bhu panati visham. My dear Lord, you are the symbol of everything auspicious. Your transcendental name and fame is spread like a canopy all over the universe, including the higher, middle, and lower planetary systems. The transcendental water that washes your lotus feet is known in the higher planetary systems as the Mandakini River, the lower planetary systems as the Bhagavati, and in this earthly planetary system as the Ganges. The sacred transcendental water flows throughout the entire universe, purifying it wherever it goes. Again, this flow of topics over the tongue of the pure devotees being compared to the Ganges. And just as the Ganges starts having been entered into the universe through the puncture that Trivikram, that Vamanadev made by taking his second step, he created a hole in the outer layer of the universe. And from that hole, the waters, spiritual waters of the causal ocean came through. They flowed first through Shvargaloka, the heavenly planetary systems, and progressively came down through the middle planetary systems and on down. And in the higher planetary systems, there are those Mandakini, later on the Bhagavati, and on this planet, those spiritual waters of the causal ocean are known as the Ganges. Wherever the Ganges waters go, they purify. By bathing in the waters of the Ganges, you can gradually purify and cleanse yourself from the effects of all past sinful activities. In every one of the 800 Hare Krishna temples, as well as any Vaishnav or Krishna or Vishnu temple anywhere in the world, there's a morning puja, morning worship that takes place, wherein a deity of the Lord, it's not necessarily the main deity, but we have a little brass Gopal deity, is bathed with water, camphor, sweetened, and a little bit of musk. And if you don't have the means to bring the actual Ganges water from India, you can touch the water with the tip of your finger here, not putting your nail in it, but you can touch an Achaman cup of water. Gange Chamune Chaiva Godavari Saraswate Namare Saraswati Narmare Sindhu Kaveri Jarashmin Samidam Kuru. That will transform ordinary tap water into Ganges water. Once again, Gange Chamune Chaiva Gadavari Saraswati Namari Sindhu Kaveda Jarishmin Samidam Caru. You can look it up if you're missing that in your morning puja. You can look up the verse and then have Ganges water every morning. Then as the deity is bathed by this auspicious substance, the water comes off, the lowest point of the Lord comes off of his feet. It's collected and then mixed with chanarmrita and rose water, as I said. And then throughout the day, visitors of the temple will get a little spoonful of that very, very sweet, nectarine tasting chanarmrita in their hand. And as the priest ladles it out, he'll often put a tulsi leaf if it's available. He'll say, Achala mito haranam savavera sarvishnu parodikan sirasya dharayamyaham. By drinking this water, it is said that everyone is living their life in fear of death, when death will come, separate them from their family, from their bank balance, from their very life itself. Everybody has this fear of death hanging over them, just like the mouse is always watchful that the snake may come and eat me. But it is said that death, personified, is afraid of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when you attach yourself to the Lord by coming before him and getting darshan, bringing offerings for the Lord and drinking the charamrita, then death personified, who is himself afraid of the Lord, leaves aside the devotees. The devotees do not have to worry about death. That was the case with Dhruva Maharaj. Tapashara Purusha Tashyava when it came time for Dhruva Maharaj to leave his body, the Lord sent a chariot with the Vishnu Dutas down from the spiritual world that Dhruva Maharaj was invited to mount and be escorted or chauffeured to Dhruvaloka, the pole star, where he's to rule for tens of thousands of years. Now, as he was approaching the chariot, death personified came, and instead of harassing him, instead of torturing him or dragging him away for punishment, because Dhruva Maharaj was completely purified of all sins, therefore, instead of being a source of fear for Dhruva Maharaj, death got down on all fours and acted as a stepping stool on top of which Dhruva was able to mount and enter into that transcendental airplane. So similarly, those topics about Krishna are like the Ganges water, and like the Ganges water that's collected from the feet of the deity every day, sipping which one gets immunization from all of one's sinful reactions, one gets freedom from the ultimate fear of death. Similarly, these topics, Ganges-like topics of Krishna, they purify, just like the Ganges purifies the upper, the middle, and lower planetary systems. The Ganges-like topics of the glories of the Lord purify the recipient, the person who hears them, such as Narada Muni, giving his own personal testimony here. It purifies the speaker, and it also purifies anybody within earshot. So as the Ganges purifies three worlds, the Ganges-like topics of the Lord purify three categories of living beings: the hearer, the speaker, and the listener. And these topics are compared to an umbrella, like on a scorching, hot summer day when all living beings are suffering, everything's dried up, everything's wrinkled, throats are parched and raspy. Nothing's more welcome than shade. Everybody's looking for shade. In Utah, during July and August, pretty much stays in the 90s. Sometimes it even hits 100. So the lamas, you'll see them, even if there's a little sliver of shade from one of the trees, depending on the time of the day and the position of the sun, they will position themselves in that sliver of shade in order to get relief from the scorching heat of the sun. So similarly, the words of the Lord in this burning forest fire of this material world, punctuated by birth, death, disease, and old age, the effect of chanting the katha, the topics about the transcendental activities of the Lord, act like a cooling shade, protecting the living beings from all the different Adhyatmic, adhibautic, adhidaitic, threefold miseries of this material world. There are two instances in the pastimes of Krishna and Arjuna in which I can recall that Krishna was responsible for putting up a canopy of shade under very, very scorching circumstances. One was when Krishna and Arjuna were keeping at bay Indra and the army of demigods while Agni was consuming the Khandava forest. They were fighting on several fronts. There were many monsters who lived in the Khandava forest. And so as Agni was burning the forest, the monsters were trying to escape. And while they were escaping, they were attacking Arjuna in the hundreds of thousands. So Arjuna had to keep those monsters in check. He had to dispatch them as they were coming to attack him. But he was also being attacked by Indra, who was throwing thunderbolt, and he was throwing showers to try and extinguish the fire in the Khandava forest. This is an instance where fire was wanted. And so Arjuna repelled that rainfall by putting a canopy of arrows over the Khandava forest. In another instance, during the Kurukshetra war, Arjuna and Krishna had to penetrate the needle-like formation of Duryodhana's army in order to reach Jayadratha, who was at the back by the end of the day. So Krishna driving the chariot, he went very expertly either over or to the left or the right of all the opponents. And at midday, when the sun was high in the sky, there were no shadows, there was no place to get any shade, what Arjuna did, Prabhupada explains in this connection that on the battlefield, the greatest danger, the greatest threat to the warriors, even more so than the weapons of their enemies, is thirst. When a warrior starts to feel thirst on the battlefield, it's very difficult to find, after he's drunk his own canteen, it's very difficult to find water on the battlefield. And usually battles are fought in the middle of the day underneath the hot sun. So when a warrior starts to be affected by thirst, then he can very easily be conquered by the enemy. He's extremely vulnerable. So there was a point during this day's hostilities when Arjuna was feeling a little mid-afternoon drain, you know, that drop in energy that we all feel around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was hot and it was dusty. So Krishna suggested that Arjuna make a canopy of arrows. Not only did he make a canopy above in the sky, but he created sides as well. So there was a little sort of hermetically sealed pavilion, rest house, right in the middle of the army of the Kauravas. And as they throw themselves as they would against the walls of this self-made pavilion, they could not penetrate it. And inside there, Arjuna and Krishna sat down, they took a break, they had something to drink, they had a few sandwiches, until such time as they were refreshed and they were to continue on their way towards Jayadratha at the back of the army. So it's in the same way that Krishna and Arjuna put up a canopy to protect themselves and give themselves relief from the hot sun in the middle of the battlefield. So similarly, anytime that you honor the Lord by vibrating his name, you're going to get the cooling relief from the hot rays of this samsara, this world of birth, death, disease, and old age. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. What that does, it connects the infinitesimal created being, the part and parcel, Mamai Vangsha Jive Loke, to the whole. The prime difference between ourselves and the Lord is that we are the created and he is the creator. And in the business of his creation, there is nothing lamentable, there's nothing regrettable in the entire creation of the Lord. We may talk about overpopulation, we may talk about viruses, we may talk about the threefold miseries due to nature and due to other living beings and due to our own body and minds. But really what the Lord has given us is perfect and complete. Any disturbances, any shortcomings, any excessive miseries in this material world are created by our misuse of what God has given us, by our assumption that we're the doers, we're the enjoyers, we're the owners, we're the controllers. This mentality causes all anomalies, all miseries, all strife, all war, all suffering in this material world. Krishna is not part of that. He's given us a perfect, full, and complete world. Even though it's matter, it's more than well equipped to provide for 10 times the population. But if the air we breathe is impure, if the water we drink is questionable, if there are food shortages, if there's a lack of housing and basic amenities for people in most parts of the world, that has nothing to do with Krishna. Krishna remains the wealthiest, the most beautiful, the most famous, the most knowledgeable, the most humble. Aishwarya Shamagasha, Viryasya Yasha, Dhyanam Vivagraschapi, Shanam Viram Tingara. And he remains, as we said in the beginning, Rishikesha Rishikena Sevanam, the master of the senses. All you have to do to solve the problems of life is tender your senses in the service of the Lord. Prabhupada used to say that there are so many hungry people in Calcutta, but if you invite them to come to the temple and get prasadam, they'll refuse. I'm not going to go to the temple. I'm not going to take the charity of the Hare Krishnas. Someone said, well, Prabhupada, what if they didn't refuse? What if they all came to the temple for being fed? Then Krishna, Prabhupada said, would provide us everything we needed and more in order to supply all the homeless in the streets of Calcutta. The problem is not in Krishna's so-called inability to provide all the residents of this planet with their basic essential comforts of life. The problem is that they will not step forward to take it. They will stand on their false pride. And all of this antagonism, this indifference, all of this keeping God at arm's length, all of this distastefulness does not directly touch the Lord because he is Atma Rama. He's always self-satisfied. He doesn't feel himself incomplete by virtue of our being indifferent to him. He doesn't feel the lack. He doesn't feel the absence of love coming from us. But he does detect it. He does intimate it as we intimate the particular type of flower through fragrance, or as we intimate the proximity of garbage by the rotten smell. We're not directly associating with the flower or with the garbage, but we can detect its presence through smell. So the odor itself and the odorous article are not one and the same. So Krishna is not directly affected by our suffering in this material world, but he is aware of it. He has detected it. There's a concern on his part that his children not suffer. Therefore, he is more keen on getting us back to home, back to Godhead, on ending our suffering than we are ourselves. So the key is to approach the Lord in purity, to approach the Lord in remorse, having regretted our indifference to him, our shedding him off, and our waywardness. The way that we approach the Supreme Lord, of course, primarily is chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And the other way that we approach him, we in fact enter directly into the spiritual world through the verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the beautiful story of the Absolute Truth. Contained within the 20,000 verses that Sukadeva Goswami imparted to Maharaj Parikshit 5,000 years ago during the last 7 days of Maharaj Parikshit's life. That Srimad Bhagavatam contains within it literature, poetry, astronomy, philosophy, religion, and most important, the Amalam Phalam, the entirely pure, spotless fruit of love of Godhead. It is said that if you simply read and study and discuss Srimad Bhagavatam, no other literature is needed. You will gain the topmost education and be well versed in every subject matter. My own personal evidence to this effect is in the form and the person of Radhika Raman Prabhu. Radhika Raman Prabhu was born in our area of the country, not too far from Utah, up there in Boise, Idaho, of devotee parents, both PhD recipients. Father worked for Hewlett Packard, this big industry there in Boise, Idaho. His mother decided early on not to send him to the public or the private schools, because in those educational systems, knowledge about and love of and awareness of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of God is conspicuous by its absence. So she decided to homeschool him, and not only did she decide to homeschool him, but she decided to use the Srimad Bhagavatam as the primary textbook. So Radhika Raman learned how to read, write, he learned mathematics, he learned astrology. Everything that he learned, the basis of it was Srimad Bhagavatam. Now that boy, whose main educational literature was pretty much exclusively the Srimad Bhagavatam, ended up going on to Boise State University, graduating as the valedictorian of his class, magna cum laude, at the age of 15, went on to Cambridge University to pursue a doctorate in theology, which he achieved at the age of 21. And at this present point in time, he is the chairman of the Department of Religion of Utah State University in Logan, Utah. So if you didn't believe the statement earlier that everything is contained within the Bhagavatam and nothing is missing from the Bhagavatam, if you didn't believe the statement that one gains the topmost education simply by studying the Bhagavatam, the proof is in the person of Sriman Radhika Raman Prabhu, one of the greatest saintly persons to walk the face of the earth. What more can I say? He has his Facebook page. He has his curricula vitae. You can, if you doubt my word, you can access. He often comes to our Salt Lake Temple, our Spanish Fork Temple, gives the talks. He's on Zoom calls. He's invited all over the world to address congregations in India and Asia. He addressed the congregation through a Zoom call in New Jersey just yesterday. But he is living proof, and he's not the only one, of course, but he's the one of whom I have firsthand knowledge, who became purified, who became girded, equipped with all transcendental knowledge, and most importantly, is decorated with the most beautiful qualities of character that one could possibly imagine. Krishna is the supreme pure, and therefore when we associate with him by chanting his holy names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, we become completely pure. You cannot approach the pure without becoming pure, but the pure himself is the means for your own purification. Therefore, we encourage everybody, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. Sing about, hear about, remember the activities, name, fame, form, and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which are like the Ganges water, purifying the recipient, the hearer, the speaker, and everybody concerned, taking us back to home, back to Godhead, from whence we originally came. We'll finish our discussion this morning on that note. Thank you for being with us, Joe, Rupa Manjari, Anjali, Rakesh, Govinda Dev, Malini. Thank you very much, Jimmy. Repeated. Oh, Vasu Kargi. Thank you, Vasu. Say hello to your wife, Sudha, Sundari Priya, John Malik, Hare Krishna, Prashant. I look forward to some references. Yes, here we go. He's got them all. Ham Sarvasya Sarvapati Viniramaktam, Radhe Sham from Tooele, Rajdeep Singh, thanks for dropping in on us. Got a long list of here. Yudha, I'm not sure, Yudha Dodo, often Yudha, frequent visitors. Going down, and then Lakshmi Nrsinga. If you want to hear a beautiful kirtan every morning, go to the Facebook page of Lakshmi Nrsinga. He has the most beautiful, beautiful songs with which you can start your day in the proper way. So thank you very much. I'll just wait till the emojis die down. Reminding you once again that as much interaction as we have, that is detected by the Facebook algorithms, and it gives us more exposure. So join, share, comment, like, whatever you can do. Don't hold back. Krishna consciousness was never achieved by being constipated, by being holding back. You need to stretch yourself, extend yourself. You need to participate. You need to jump in, be part of it. And what you can do right now is like, join, share, and comment. And thank you very much. I look forward to seeing what it is that you've left for me after we end this broadcast, responding as best I can. Thank you so much for being with us on Motivational Monday to start off this beautiful week of Krishna consciousness. Till we meet again tomorrow for Transcendental Tuesday. Keep chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Little explosions. You know, I don't know if you can see it, but as the emoji rises up, before it disappears, it kind of explodes. There's a little Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram.